business people, government agencies, and affected communities will all need to engage, will all need to be engaged. So therefore, public consultation might be used to gather input from the broader public, while workshop, on the other hand, an advisory committee could facilitate dialogue among key actors. So basically, the method of stakeholder engagement are four: consultation, workshops, and roundtable discussions, advisory committee, online platforms. These are very vital. The next item is techniques for managing conflicting stakeholders' interests. Where you bring people together, particularly critical stakeholders. Each and every of the group is coming to what? To defend, to protect its own interests. So on the basis of that, there are techniques for managing these conflicting stakeholder interests. Managing conflicting stakeholders' interests is one of the most challenging aspects of stakeholders' engagement. Conflict often arises due to differences in priorities, values, and the potential impact of the policy on various groups. Effective conflict management requires open communication, negotiation, and compromise. Take for instance, you want to talk of, you want to formulate a policy on education. You know that for sure you're going to have conflicting stakeholders' interests. The government will have its interest, the private sector, they will have their interests, the academic staff will have their interests, the non-academic staff will have their interests, the contractors will have their own interests, etc., etc. So since that is the case, managing conflicting stakeholder interests is very, very challenging. Conflict may arise due to what? Differences in priority. The academic staff will want an improved welfare, introducing or creating so many allowances: hazard allowance, dressing allowance, teaching allowance, disturbance allowance, etc., etc. The non-academic will feel, yes, we are the one who are making things easier for you. They will come with their own different also interests and priorities. So therefore, conflict that may arise due to differences in priorities, value, and the potential impact of such policies on various groups. Effective conflict management requires open what? Communication, negotiation, and compromise. If you go to the health sector, for instance, doctors will say they want this. Once governments have done it, pharmacies will say, no, we are not left behind. They want this. Once they are giving what they want, nurses will say this. And then the other peripheral or those working at the periphery will also bring their own issue. So, as a policy analyst, you have a techniques for conflict management. Let's take these techniques one by one. The first one is stakeholder mapping and analysis. Stakeholder mapping and analysis. Before engaging stakeholders, it is essential to conduct a thorough analysis of their interests, power, and influence. Get it correctly. Before engaging stakeholders, it is essential to conduct a thorough analysis of their interests, power, and influence. Stakeholder mapping helps identify potential area of conflict by visually representing the relationship between potential area of conflict by the relationship between stakeholder and their respective position on the issue. So therefore, policymaker can use this analysis to anticipate conflict and develop strategy for addressing them. What we're trying to say here, that stakeholders mapping helps identify potential area of conflict by visually representing the relationship between the stakeholders and their respective position on the issue. For that reason, as a policy analyst, you can use this analysis to anticipate conflict and develop strategy for addressing them. Now, let's take an example. If the fuel subsidy removal was done in a better way and all these critical stakeholders were engaged, the mapping, the stakeholders mapping analysis here will have assisted the government to know that now Labour Party, what will be their interests? What will be their position on the issue? What is the relationship between the Labour Party, the workers, the independent marketers, the NNPC? So you make all your analysis, try to find out their various interests, their various positions on the matter. So once you have done that mapping and analysis, then you realize that you can use such policy analysis. You can use this analysis to anticipate conflict. And then in doing that, you will now develop a strategy for addressing them. In a land use policy, for example, developers may prioritize economic growth and job creation, while an environmental group may emphasize sustainability and conservation. You see the two different interests now. If you are developing any land policy, for instance, a developer may prioritize economic growth and job creation. He believes that yes, he want to improve in the GDP. You think economic growth, you associate it with his profit maximization, and he will now tell you he's creating job. Since he's developing, maybe he's constructing an estate, he believes that he's going to give work to artisans, masons, laborers, carpenters, etc., painters, screeders, those doing POP and what have you. So he believes that he is improving on the economy and is creating job. But if you are thinking of an environmental group, their own emphasis may be sustainability and conservation. You don't have to misuse the land. You don't have to go and start digging. You don't have to go and block a waterway. You don't have to go and do this and that. So their own emphasis might be on sustainability and conservation. Therefore, stakeholder mapping can help identify areas of alignment and disagreement between these groups. And the mapping can also direct you to agreeing to agree and not to agreeing to disagree. That is stakeholder mapping and analysis. The second one is negotiation and mediation. In cases where conflicting interests are significant, negotiation and mediation can help stakeholders find common ground or compromises or compromise. See the difference? In case of in case where conflicting interests are significant, negotiation and mediation can help stakeholders find common ground or compromise. A neutral mediator can facilitate discussions, ensuring that all parties have an opportunity to voice their concern and work towards maturely accepting solutions. Mediation is particularly useful when stakeholders are entrenched in their position and direct negotiation prove difficult. So within the discussion, you might agree to agree. But where it becomes difficult in the negotiation, then mediation comes in. You might seek an expert mediator who will now have to come in, who will now be used. I mean, may be useful when stakeholders are entrenched in their position and direct negotiation proves difficult. So a mediator can now come to look at the two problems. As I said, now is seeking to do what Mary Parker Fowler said, to reach what? Integration. Where the two parties will come to sit together, a mediator will now talk in between them, and they will now agree, all of them, each party will feel satisfied. In the case of conflicting interests over a new infrastructure project, for example, such as a dam, a mediator might work with both the government and local communities to negotiate compensation or alternative solution that address both economic and environmental concerns. So you can see the power of negotiation and mediation. As I give you an example of a conflicting interest over a new infrastructure project, such as a construction of a dam. If there are conflicting interests and a mediator is assigned, he might work with both the government on one hand and the local communities to which the dam is to be constructed to negotiate what compensation. If those that their land has been taken for the construction of that have been compensated, one problem is solved. And then on the other hand, from the side of the government, from the side of the government, the compensation is paid or alternative solution that address both economic and environmental concern. So you see, from the side of the community, they've been compensated. From the side of government, yes, issue that has to involve economy, probably they will think the compensation will be high. No need to pay compensation more. So these people, they are to benefit from it and what have you. And the environmental hazard, maybe they are thinking, yes, it may affect area A, area B. So a mediator can negotiate this compensation or provide an alternative solution that address both economic and environmental factor. And at the end, from the side of the government, from the side of the committee, everybody will be satisfied. Another technique is consensus building. Consensus building. Consensus building is a collaborative approach that seeks to find solutions that all stakeholders can agree upon. Unlike majority voting, where some group may feel marginalized, consensus building ensures that decisions are made collectively with input from all parties. This approach requires willingness to compromise and a focus on shared goals rather than individual position. So consensus is very important. Consensus building is a collective approach that usually finds solution which all the stakeholders can agree upon. It's not unlike what we used to have in National Assembly, or unlike the majority voting. The majority voting, the majority may have the majority. They may have the majority, but that will not. Maybe it depends on the population that were present. That might not represent the actual interest. Just as it used to happen in the National Assembly. If they want to maneuver, they will say, they will give you a kind of voice vote. If you are in support, say aye, you hear aye. If you are against, say nil. Even if the nil is louder, you say the ayes have it. So this is not different from majority voting. You have a total of 109 senators. And where you have 15 in attendance, and you say you subject it to voting, then you get 30 against 20. Does that form majority? When over 59 are not in attendance, so that is not majority. And it's the same thing with the voice voting. If you are supposed to say aye, somebody that is having a loud voice, you say ah, you hold the sound out there. Those against say nil, nil. That is at the discretion of the Senate President. You say now, the ayes have it, and even if it is against the popular wish. So in case of conflicting interests over a new infrastructure project, I've said this. In case in the formulation of public health policy, for instance, we are talking of consensus building now. I'm just trying to start an example. In the formulation of public health policies, such as vaccination programs, consensus building effort might involve healthcare providers, government agencies, patient advocacy groups, and pharmaceutical companies working together to design policies that balance public health needs with individuals' rights. If you are talking about vaccination, in the far north, we know the campaign. Those who are against it, they will say they are giving vaccination to stop their female from giving birth, because they say the population of the north is much, and that is why they are doing the vaccination. So there is that misinformation. So in the case, in the formulation of public health policy, for example, such as the vaccination program has said, consensus building effort here may involve what? Healthcare providers. 2, government agencies. 3, patient advocacy groups, those that will campaign to those that the vaccination will be administered to them. And then pharmaceutical companies, those working together to design policies that balance public health needs with individuals' rights. You cannot force somebody to come and do vaccination. But if you are talking vaccination against polio, for example, you need a serious campaign here and then consensus building here, which will involve healthcare providers, government agencies, patient advocacy group, and pharmaceutical companies. These, they have to come together to design policy that balance the public health needs with the individual's right. Another technique is deliberative processes. What are we saying here? Deliberative processes involve structured dialogue that encourage stakeholders to discuss and reflect on policy issues in a thorough and inclusive manner. What do we say here? Deliberative processes that involve structured dialogues that encourage stakeholders to discuss freely and reflect on policy issues in a thoughtful and inclusive manner. These processes often involve multiple rounds of discussion, allowing stakeholders to consider evidence, weigh trade-off, and move towards a common understanding. Deliberation can help build trust and reduce polarization by focusing on evidence-based decision-making. For example, in the climate change policy, deliberative processes might involve stakeholders discussing different policy options for reducing carbon emissions, considering the long-term environmental and economic trade-off of each option. So the deliberative process is also very important. And the most important thing that is involved in deliberative processes has to be with multiple rounds of discussions, allowing stakeholders to consider evidence, weigh trade-off, and move towards a common understanding. Deliberation can help build trust and reduce polarization by focusing on evidence-based decision-making. Another method is transparency and communication. So if you want your policy to achieve, the techniques you have to adopt is to make it very transparent and very transparency and communication. Clear and transparent communication is essential for managing stakeholders' conflict. If it's not transparent and you cannot communicate it very well, it will create what? Suspicions. It will create what? Hatred. It will make people to kill it right before its formation. So policy makers should be open about decision-making process, share relevant information with all stakeholders, and provide feedback on how stakeholders' input is being used. Transparency helps build trust and reduce misunderstanding or misinformation that could affect or that can bring conflict. For example, in urban planning policies, transparency might involve regularly updating stakeholders about the progress of project, timeliness, and any changes to the organizational plan, ensuring that all parties are informed and can provide input at each stage. So therefore, the techniques, as we mentioned, are not limited to stakeholder mapping and analysis, negotiation and mediation, consensus building, deliberative processes, and finally, transparency and communication. Having said that, if you have questions, you are free to ask before we move to the next topic, which is going to be policy evaluation method. All that we discussed in the past are related to stakeholders' engagement. We also identify the types of stakeholders. We discussed the method of stakeholders engagement. We also talk on techniques for managing conflicting stakeholders' interests. And now, if there are no questions, we still have time, we can discuss on policy evaluation methods. Any question? Timothy Chinedu Adewale Adamu Ibini who Onove Tama
No question, sir.
Mangai and 9 others.
No question, sir.
Okay, so let's quickly look at policy evaluation method. Just as we have stakeholders engagement and their method and their techniques. Now, we quickly look at policy evaluation method. Policy evaluation is an essential component of policy process that aims to assess the effectiveness, efficiency, and impact of public policies. It provides insight into whether a policy is achieving its objectives. It also helps policymakers understand the outcomes of their decisions and guides future policy improvement. Evaluation uses a variety of methods to collect data, measure outcome, and analyze results.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, I'm with you. Sorry, just a minute. So therefore,
Hello, sir.
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm saying that you said policy evaluation is an essential component.
Yes.
That helps in
policy process that aims to assess the effectiveness, efficiency, and impact of public policies. I say, just be getting the lectures. By God grace, when we meet physical contact by next week, I'm going to release my note.
Thank you, sir.
It's only you that thank me, or it's like others are not interested.
So we all are.
We
are interested, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
As I was talking, the policy evaluation provides insight into whether a policy is achieving its objectives. One, whether it helps policymakers understand the outcome of their decision and guide future policy improvement. Evaluation uses a variety of methods to collect data, measure outcome, and analyze results. This method can broadly categorize into qualitative and quantitative approaches, and they often complement each other in policy evaluation. Now, quantitative method for policy evaluation policies. What do you mean here? Qualitative methods are used to gather in-depth contextual information about the experiences, perspectives, and attitude of individuals or groups affected by the policy. What makes it qualitative? Qualitative method for evaluating policy. We say qualitative method are used to gather in-depth contextual information about the experiences, perspectives, and attitude of individuals or groups affected by a policy. This method focuses on understanding the why and how behind policy outcomes and are particularly useful for exploring complex social dynamics. Then the qualitative method for evaluating policies include among the following. I will not explain this to you, but I will mention them. You can now read them on your own when I give you the note. The first one is survey. Survey survey as a structured questionnaires that collect quantitative and qualitative data from a sample of a respondent. They are widely used in policy evaluation to measure public opinion, satisfaction, or perception regarding the public impact. Survey can be administered in person, by phone, or online, and they allow evaluators to gather data from large number of individuals efficiently. Survey provides standard data that can be easily analyzed and compare across groups. They are cost effective and allow for the collection of both qualitative and quantitative data. However, it may suffer from response bias and the quality of the data depend on the design of the questionnaire and the representations or the representativeness of the sample. For example, a government agency might use a survey to evaluate a public health policy by asking citizens about their awareness of and satisfaction with the health services. I say I won't go into detail of this, but I will mention them. Then the second one is interview. We know what interview is all about. The third one is the focus group. I've discussed it the other time. And in the focus group, a focus group might be conducted with residents of a neighborhood affected by a new urban planning policy, for example, to understand their views on changes in infrastructure and public services. Then another method is quantitative method for evaluating policy. All this we've talked about, the qualitative one, the survey, the interview, the focus group, are all qualitative method for evaluating policy. Now quantitative method for evaluating policy. Quantitative method focus on measuring the numerical impact of a policy and involve the use of statistical techniques to analyze data. These are different. When we talk of the qualitative method, we say the qualitative method are used to gather in-depth contextual information about the experiences, perspectives, and attitude of individuals or groups offered by policy. Now, quantitative method, on the other hand, focus on measuring the numerical impact of a policy and involve the use of statistical techniques to analyze data. This method of quantitative method for evaluating policies, these methods are essential for determining the effectiveness of policies in achieving measurable outcomes. And this technique are used through the following ways. One, statistical method. We all know what statistical method is all about. But for the sake of the class, we say statistical methods are used to analyze numerical data and identify trends, correlation, and causal relationship between variables. Common statistical techniques in policy evaluation include regressions analysis, hypothesis testing, and descriptive statistics. Statistical methods provide adjective, quantifiable evidence of policy outcome and allow for rigorous testing of hypotheses. However, statistical method, it requires high quality data, and the result may not capture the full complexity of a policy impact. Let me give you an example. Evaluators might use regression analysis to assess the relationship between a tax policy and changes in income inequality, controlling for other factors such as employment rate and inflation. So in some instances, evaluators might use regression analysis to assess the relationship between a tax policy and change in what? Income inequality. Controlling the other factors such as what? Employment rate and inflation might suffer. Another quantitative method of evaluating policy is data analysis. Data analysis involves the systematic examination of data collected through various means, such as survey, administrative record, experimental studies. Data analysis can involve both descriptive statistics, e.g. mean, median, mode, and inferential statistics, e.g. regression, correlation, to drive conclusion about policy effectiveness. Data analysis allowed evaluators to identify trends, patterns, and relationship between large data sets. It can provide insight into both short-term and long-term policy effects. On the other hand, it requires expertise in statistical techniques, and the quality of the result depends on the accuracy and completeness of the data. For example, in evaluating an education policy, oh no, you are disturbing. For example, in evaluating an education policy, evaluators might analyze student performance data to determine whether the policy has improved academic outcomes. So this is all about data analysis. The last one is mixed method approach. From the name, mixed. Mixed policy evaluation adopts a mixed method approach, combining both qualitative and quantitative methods to provide a more comprehensive understanding of policy outcomes. So you can see why it's called mixed. because of the combination of qualitative and quantitative method. By method approach has to do with the fact that you now have to integrate qualitative insight with quantitative evidence. Evaluators can capture both the measurable impact of a policy and the contextual factors that shape those outcomes. A mixed method evaluation of a public transportation policy, for example, might include survey to gather quantitative data on ridership and travel times, along with interview to understand passengers' experiences and satisfaction. So you can see the mix there now. A mixed method of evaluation of a public transportation policy, for example, might include survey. You are doing survey to gather what? Quantitative data on relationship and travel times, along with interviews. This is qualitative now, to understand passengers' experiences and satisfaction. So these are basically the method, the quantitative method for evaluating policy. We have discussed the qualitative, which we said has to do with survey, interview, focus group. The quantitative method for evaluating policy has to do with statistical method, data analysis, and mixed method approach. Question. These were the topic we discussed last week. We're about taking another new topic, which is challenges in policy evaluation. Challenges in policy evaluation. We have about 25 minutes, so can we continue? Hello, class.
It all depends on you, sir. We're here.
Okay. So if it's on me, let's take another 1 hour. I'm just meeting you at this level. Maybe you have about two, 3 lectures already. So challenges in policy evaluation. Now, after all said and done, policy evaluation plays a crucial role in assessing the effectiveness of policy programs. But it is not without challenges. Evaluation often faces political, organizational, and ethical constraints that can complicate the process. These obstacles must be carefully navigated to ensure that the evaluation is credible, transparent, and useful for decision making. So under these challenges, we have the first challenge, which is we have the challenge which we said include political and organizational constraint. Political and organizational constraint can significantly impact the evaluation process, often dictating what can be evaluated how data is collected, and which findings are reported. Policy evaluation is inherently political as it deals with public resources, stakeholder interests, and government accountability. Several key constraints arise in these contents. So in doing this evaluation, it faces a lot of challenges. The challenges are coherent. The challenges, the impact and the evaluation process of tent is being detected. What can be evaluated, how data is collected, and which findings are reported is all subject to influence and manipulations. So policy evaluation is inherently political. It can politically be influenced, as it deals with public resources and whatever is to be done. Public resources are involved. It's government that releases it. Stakeholders' interests are also involved. And government accountability are also considered. So therefore, several key constraints arise in this context of challenges in policy evaluation. Now let's look at this constraint one after the other. For example, political influence. Evaluations are often subject to political pressure from policymakers, government agencies, or interest groups. You can see that. So policy evaluation is being influenced. It's being influenced.
You don't want your jẹ́ tó bá máa ń bá ìtẹ̀ sí tòkì wà á rí tí wọ́n kó ṣe ìjẹ́ pàmìsẹ̀ wà á rí yàdúró wọ́n máa tó bá wọ́n pàmìsẹ̀ tó ti ra aṣọ ẹ̀. Táíwò. Sorry sir.
Táíwò tá bá rí fi dis máa gbá létí o. Jọ̀bọ́.
I'm sorry, sir. The thing I'm saying is, sir, I'm very, very sorry, sir.
I hear you. So, on the basis of that, you discover that whatever other policy formulation, other implementation, other evaluation is being influenced politically. And then, since the evaluation are often subject to public pressure from policymakers, pressure from government agencies or interest groups, who may attempt to influence the findings to serve their agenda. For recent construction of dam, we all heard of what happened to one of the dams in Maiduguri. Some people were sent there, they went and did a critical analysis before the release of water from Cameroon. And they submitted their report with all the recommendations and warnings that the dam was about to collapse and it needs a serious rehabilitation and renovations and upgrade. Some people, for the fact that that is not their interest, for the fact that the lot of administrative bottlenecks from moving from one to table to other, from one ministry to other for the funds to be released, what happened? The dam collapsed. The whole of Maiduguri town was in water. And what happened to those people that caused this? Nothing. Nothing. No head is rolled. Nobody is punished. Nobody is jailed. The preliminary report and all money spent cannot be accounted for, and the whole thing had to start all over again. So therefore, when we are talking of political influence, the policy makers will have to be aware of government agencies, the various interest groups. These are people, or these are groups that may attempt to what? Influence the findings to first and foremost serve their own agenda. Politicians may seek to deploy negative result or overwrite positive outcomes to protect their reputation or justify the continuation of certain policy. In some cases, evaluators may be pressured to focus on specific aspects of a policy while ignoring others' potential, leading to biased result. So whatever case, a report might come indicting or negatively, but for their own political agenda, they might influence that result to be positive instead of negative. A government may want to highlight the economic benefit of a new housing policy, for example, even if there are significant negative social impact. Those resisting the scope of the evaluation may come out to say this thing is not going to work. We may decide not to go on this. But for the fact that a government may want to highlight the economic benefit of a new housing policy, even if there are significant negative social impact. In this way, restricting the scope of the evaluation. The evaluation report may come not in support of such housing policy, particularly where it is to be cited. But because the government want to get more votes from that area, may decide now to do the other way around. So how do you overcome this political influence? To mitigate political interferences, evaluators should maintain independence and transparency throughout the evaluation process. If we want to do away with this kind of influence from the government, from the interest group, from the politicians, from whoever, then evaluators should maintain independence and transparency. It's a project, their budget, their money, their everything should be given to them. They should be allowed to work independent of government influence, community influence, public influence, and what have you, throughout the evaluation process. Then it should clearly defining the scope and methodology of the evaluation into the outset. and involving external evaluators or third-party organization can help reduce bias and political influence. So if we are to do these two, there is the need that there should be clearly defined the scope and methodology of the evaluation from the outset of the of the evaluation process. And this can be done by restricting the scope of this can clearly be by defining the scope and methodology of the evaluation from the outset and involving external evaluators. Even if the first evaluators have done, or more preferably an external evaluator should be involved, or there should be a third party organization that can help reduce bias and political influence. Then another challenge is the organizational barrier. Organizational barrier is also a challenge. Organizational constraints such as limited resources, lack of data, or resistance from staff can hinder the evaluation process. Organizational barriers in this case here, or organizational constraints such as limited resources. You want to do evaluation when the people lack resources, or lack of data, lack of useful information that they can do to do the evaluation, beginning from the development, formation, implementation, and then now the evaluation process. Report. Government agencies or organizations responsible for implementing the policy may not prioritize evaluation, leading to inadequate funding, staff shortages, or insufficient data collection system. Additionally, organizational culture may resist change, viewing evaluation as threatening or disrupting, especially if they highlight inefficiency or failures. For example, in the case of a health policy, evaluation, in case of a health policy evaluation, an agency might lack the necessary patient data to conduct a thorough assessment of healthcare outcomes due to poor record keeping or limited access to information. So as you can see, organizational barriers too plays this significant or negative role in terms of organizational constraint, with limited resources, lack of data, or resistance from staff. You know, we used to have a tradition in our working place. There are staff that have been in a schedule for only God knows years. And any attempt to bring a new person who will bring new innovations or ideas is met with serious opposition. Some of them can even go extra mile to either deal with that new person to be posted, or to do one or two of their juju to those who believe in it, because I don't believe in it. They will go extra mile to make sure that they stopped such people. They believe it is their birthright and they have a traditional way of doing it, and that way must be done in that particular aspect. So this kind of organizational barriers or organizational constraint also bring about challenge in the evaluation process. How do you overcome this? Building strong relationship with the organization involved in an evaluation is important. Establishing clear communication channel and ensuring that stakeholders understand the benefit of evaluation can help reduce resistance. Providing training and retraining, technical support, and adequate resources can also enhance the quality of data and the overall evaluation process. This are important also. On this note, I think we have to stop here with this particular challenges in public evaluation, which we have talked about political and organizational constraint. Under the political, we talk of political influence and how to overcome it, and we talk of organizational barrier or organizational constraint and how to overcome it. This brings us to the end of today's lecture. By physical contact, if we remain healthy and alive, God willing, we shall look at ethical consideration in public evaluation. So if you continue talking, I don't want you to be off your number 6. That whitish thing in your scope at times need also to relax. You do 2-3 lectures in a day. You are taking your little jotting, and then when you have the note, if you are attending the lectures, then it will be easier for you. It will be catchy. It will be look as if you know you have known it all. Questions? Questions? Tama.
No question, sir. Just want to say thank you for very good information. Thank you.
Are you talking on behalf of the class generally? You have said no question from your end.
Yes, from my end, sir.
No questions. Okay, I will try and see whether we're able to submit to release to you also all the assignments with my comments and your scores, if I'm able to finish all. And I've closed collecting any assignment. Those who have not done, well, they should try harder in the next assignment for them to do. But they have lost significant score of the CA, the continual assessment. All is not lost. If they are lucky, I operate in my first frequency, I may reconsider. And if they find me in the second one, better. The third one, hard luck. I wish you all the best and happy weekend. And to
Same
meet
to you,
by next week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Physical contact. And God willing, I should be reminded.
Ya kina haka kuma.
I should be reminded the day before the lectures, so that I will bring the
notes.
note. Yes, the note I will give you just one hard copy so that you reproduce. I try to separate it to give you the soft copy. If I give you the soft copy, I'm giving an exposing on the exams and the exam questions. I try to separate them. Technically, I couldn't do that. So I printed a set of hard copy that with the references that I will give to the class rep. Do you have a class rep now, or you maintain the other one? Hello.
Me yasa kina ta cire wannan?
I think we had
Ban
one,
ce ki
sir,
bude ba
but
ki
I'm not
kife shi
sure
bai
if
kama
it's
wuta.
still
Ki cire wannan babban da kin sa ki
same
kife
guy
zai
is still
kama.
operating as
Ban san me yasa
friend.
kina ta
So we
bude shi
had
din.
somebody. I think it was the Reverend. I think it was the Reverend. Not sure.
Yeah, but the reverends who met with resistance the other time, I even appealed on his behalf that they should leave him, but I don't know whether the class have agreed. You should be able to appoint somebody that will be there for you all the time. And if you agree you are leaving him, fine. When I come, I'll hand over to him. Or you assign somebody that will hand over to him. After the production, my copy should be returned to me. That is just the order. I'll
Okay.
make the copy available for the class to reproduce. Yes. And I don't know whether I'm going to have another class contact with you people again on Friday for the theories of public policy and governance. If that will hold true, I should inform in good time. That one will be Friday, then our physical lectures for public policy and evaluation will be on Saturday, God willing. Have a blessed day and blessed Sunday, and put me in your church service, put me in prayers in your church service tomorrow.
Okay, sir. You have a wonderful weekend, sir.
What of in Asalatu, sir?
Thank you very much,
We
sir.
will also put you in Asalatu.
Okay. Well, that's why I say prayers. When I say prayer, it encompasses the church and then the mosque.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the lecture, sir.
You don't
Thank you.
want the traditional, sir.
No, I don't want that one. I don't believe in that.
Hey!
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Thank you,
have a
sir.
Thank you so
pleasant
much,
night.
sir.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. Yes.
Hello, class. Hello, class. Can somebody hear me?